The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around Galactic Research Station K-117, its crystalline sensor arrays glowing with a soft blue light against the backdrop of distant stars. The station's design reflected the elegant architecture of its builders, smooth curved surfaces that seemed to flow like frozen water, with observation domes dotting its surface like dewdrops on a leaf. Inside the primary observation chamber, Senior Observer Tadiel sat at his monitoring station, his four-fingered hands hovering over the holographic interface. His large, almond-shaped eyes reflected the scrolling data streams that filled the air around him. The chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional beep from the various monitoring systems. Tadiel had worked this same shift for over 3 cycles, and most days blended into each other with comfortable routine. But today was different. His attention kept returning to an unusual signal pattern that had appeared at the edge of their scanning range. The signal pulsed with a regular rhythm that seemed too structured to be natural. Curious, he muttered to himself, his head frills twitching with interest as he adjusted the sensors to focus on the anomaly. The signal was coming from an unexplored sector near the outer rim of mapped space. It didn't match any known patterns in the station's extensive database. The door to the observation chamber slid open with a soft hiss, and Station Commander Hanbin strode in. Hanbin was tall even for their species, with the distinctive silver-gray skin that marked him as being from the Central Worlds. His uniform bore the complex patterns that indicated his high rank and long years of service. "Commander," Tadiel called out, "I've detected something unusual that requires your attention." He gestured to the holographic display, expanding the signal pattern so it filled the air between them. "This signal has been repeating for the past 3 hours. It's structured and appears to be artificial in nature." Hanbin's expression remained neutral as he studied the pattern, his head frills barely moving, a sign of either deep thought or deep boredom. "Location?" he asked, his voice carrying the clipped tones of someone used to giving orders. "Sector 847, near the edge of our scanning range," Tadiel replied, bringing up a map of the region. "It's coming from an unexplored system, but the signal strength suggests it originates from the third planet." Hanbin waved his hand dismissively, causing the holographic display to flicker. "That sector is listed as containing only pre-FTL civilizations, nothing worth our attention." He turned away, pulling up his own display of station reports and maintenance schedules. Tadiel's head frills twitched with concern. "But sir, the pattern suggests distress. It could be." "Senior Observer," Hanbin cut him off, "I've seen countless signals like this in my career. Primitive species often discover radio waves and begin broadcasting all sorts of nonsense into space. It's nothing but background noise, the equivalent of children playing with new toys." The commander's tone left no room for argument, but Tadiel couldn't shake his unease. He watched as the signal continued to pulse on his display, its rhythm steady and insistent. Something about it felt different from the usual space noise they monitored. As Hanbin busied himself with administrative tasks, Tadiel quietly adjusted the sensors to record the signal for later analysis. He couldn't explain why, but his instincts told him they were making a mistake by ignoring it. The observation chamber fell back into its usual quiet routine, but the signal continued its steady broadcast into the void. Unknown to both Tadiel and Hanbin, their decision to dismiss it would have consequences far beyond their imagination. The message they ignored was not the random noise of a primitive civilization, but something far more significant, a warning of events that would soon shake the foundations of their ordered universe. Outside the station, the crystalline arrays continued their endless scan of space, their blue glow a tiny beacon in the vast darkness. And somewhere, in the distance, events were already in motion that would force the galaxy to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about primitive species and the dangers of making assumptions based on incomplete data. The signal pulsed on, unheeded but unrelenting, counting down to a moment when the galaxy would learn a valuable lesson about the dangers of underestimating those they considered beneath their notice. But for now, on Station K117, it was just another quiet shift in the endless watch over the stars. Captain Mock stood on the bridge of the stellar blade, his razor-sharp teeth gleaming in a predatory smile as he studied the colony below. The settlement appeared vulnerable, spread out across the valley like scattered toys on a child's floor. Through the ship's viewing screens, he could see only basic structures, habitat domes, farming units, and what looked like primitive processing facilities. No defense grid, no orbital weapons. Not even a single patrol ship, he purred, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. This will be the easiest raid we've conducted in cycles. His crew shared knowing looks. They had performed dozens of such raids on outer colonies, and the pattern was always the same. Swoop in, overwhelm any resistance, take what they wanted, and leave before any help could arrive. The pirates' reputation had grown with each successful operation, and Captain Mock's name was whispered with fear across 3 sectors. Launch the first wave, he commanded, watching as his assault shuttles descended toward the colony. The ships were sleek, black vessels designed for rapid deployment of troops. Remember, we want minimal damage to the infrastructure. Dead colonists can't work, and we need labor for the mining operations. The shuttles touched down in a circle around the main habitat dome. Mock's warriors, each wearing the latest in combat armor, poured out with weapons ready. They moved with practiced efficiency, expecting the usual panicked screams and desperate attempts at surrender. Instead, they met silence. The first sign that something was wrong came when Grax, his most experienced squad leader, reported unusual readings. Captain, the gravity here. It's much higher than standard. How can anyone even? The transmission cut off in a burst of static, followed by the sharp crack of what sounded like primitive chemical propellant weapons. Mock's smile vanished as he watched 3 of his warriors fall, their supposedly impenetrable armor punctured by what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. Impossible, he muttered, switching between visual feeds from his troops' helmets. The scenes that played out before him defied everything he knew about combat operations. The colonists moved with incredible speed despite the crushing gravity, using the environment to their advantage. They appeared to be led by a small female, her movements precise and lethal as she directed the defense. What they lacked in advanced technology, they made up for with shocking physical prowess and tactical skill. Fall back to position beta, Mock ordered, watching in disbelief as another of his assault teams retreated under heavy fire. The colonists weren't just fighting back, they were hunting his warriors. Through one of the helmet feeds, he caught a glimpse of the female leader, Security Chief Sun Mei, according to the colonial records they'd hacked. She moved like a predator, her muscles clearly adapted to the high-gravity environment. In her hands, she held what looked like an Arctic projectile weapon, but its effectiveness was undeniable. What kind of species thrives in 1.8 G? Mock wondered aloud, his claws leaving scratches in the command console as he gripped it tighter. The question wasn't just academic. It was becoming a matter of survival. Another squad reported heavy casualties. The colonists had somehow anticipated their fallback positions and had set up ambush points. They were using the terrain and their superior physical capabilities to devastating effect. Captain, his second-in-command, spoke up. These readings can't be right. The colonists are moving at full speed in gravity that should be crushing them. Our troops can barely stand. Mock hissed in frustration as he watched a group of colonists flip one of his assault vehicles using pure physical strength. The vehicle's crew scrambled out, only to be quickly subdued by colonists who moved with impossible agility in the high gravity. Abort the ground assault, he finally ordered, his pride warring with his survival instinct. Get our people back to the ships. We'll bombard them from orbit instead. But even as he gave the order, he noticed something on the long-range scanners, energy signatures, massive ones, approaching from the direction of the colony's home system. The colonists hadn't just been fighting back. They'd been buying time. As his troops struggled to retreat to their shuttles, pursued by the relentless colonists, Mock realized he had made a terrible miscalculation. These weren't helpless settlers waiting to be preyed upon. They were something else entirely. Something that could not only survive but thrive in conditions that would kill most species. The last thing he saw before ordering an emergency withdrawal was Security Chief Sunma standing in the colony's central plaza, calmly reloading her weapon as she watched his forces flee. She didn't look tired. She didn't look afraid. She looked like someone who was used to fighting in hell itself. And winning. Deep beneath the surface of Colony Nexus 7, in a reinforced bunker designed to withstand orbital bombardment, Communications Officer Jai-1's fingers danced across the quantum transmitter's holographic interface. The soft blue glow of the emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the bunker's walls as alarms continued to wail throughout the colony. Come on, she muttered, her eyes fixed on the connection status indicator. The quantum transmitter was their most advanced piece of communication equipment, hidden away from casual scans that might reveal the colony's true technological level. Around her, the bunker hummed with activity as other crew members monitored the pirates' movements and coordinated the colony's defense. Security feeds showed the pirates retreating to their ships, but Jai-1 knew better than to feel relieved. Pirates rarely gave up so easily, and these ones had enough firepower in orbit to reduce the colony to ash if they chose to. The quantum transmitter finally established a secure connection. Jai-1's fingers moved even faster, encoding the emergency message with layers of encryption that would authenticate their distress call to Earth Defense Command. Colony Nexus 7 under attack. Multiple hostile vessels. Requesting immediate assistance. Authentication code Delta 79. She transmitted, adding detailed scans of the pirate vessels and their current tactical situation. Warning: hostiles likely to begin orbital bombardment. Colony defenses activated but cannot withstand sustained assault. A hand touched her shoulder, making her jump. It was Security Chief Sunma, still carrying her rifle and covered in dust from the surface battle. Message sent, Sunma asked, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. Jai-1 nodded, checking the transmission logs. Clean signal, full packet received by the quantum relay network. Earth Defense Command should get it within minutes. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, the transmission passed near Station K-117. The station's sophisticated arrays automatically intercepted and decoded part of the message, routing it to Commander Hanbin's personal terminal. Hanbin glanced at the decoded fragments with the same dismissive attitude he'd shown earlier. His species prided themselves on their technological advancement, and anything that didn't match their expected patterns was automatically categorized as primitive. More radio chatter from the surface, he told his staff, not even bothering to read the full message. These primitives are certainly persistent with their broadcasting. Back in the colony bunker, Jai-1 monitored the quantum network for confirmation of their message's receipt. The bunker's air was growing thick with tension as minutes ticked by without response. How long until the fleet arrives? One of the younger colonists asked, their voice shaking slightly. Depends on their current patrol route, Sunma answered, checking the tactical displays. Could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. We just need to hold out until then. The bunker shook suddenly, dust falling from the ceiling. Above them, the pirates had begun their orbital bombardment, testing the colony's hidden shields. Shields at 92% and holding, reported the defense officer. They're still using low-yield weapons, probably trying to preserve any resources they want to steal. Jai-1 kept her eyes locked on the quantum transmitter, watching for any response. The device suddenly lit up with an incoming message, and her heart leaped. But it wasn't from Earth Defense Command. Instead, it was an automated acknowledgement from Station K-117, indicating they had intercepted the transmission but classified it as non-priority communication. They're ignoring us, she said in disbelief, showing the message to Sunma. The Galactic Council station is right there, and they're ignoring a direct distress call. Sunma's expression hardened. It doesn't matter. Help is already on the way, and they'll learn soon enough what it means to underestimate humans. Another explosion rocked the bunker, stronger this time. The pirates were escalating their attack, frustrated by the colony's unexpected defenses. Shields at 87%, called out the defense officer. They're switching to higher-yield weapons. Ji-1 sent one final message into the quantum network, this one encoded specifically for Earth Defense Command. Be advised, Galactic Council Station K-117 has ignored multiple distress calls. Request diplomatic follow-up after situation resolved. As she finished transmitting, the bunker's sensors detected new energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. The pirates hadn't noticed yet, too focused on their bombardment, but Ji-1 allowed herself a small smile as she recognized the signature pattern. The cavalry was arriving, and Commander Han-Bin's bureaucratic oversight was about to become a diplomatic incident of galactic proportions. Sometimes, Ji-1 reflected, the worst mistakes came not from action, but from dismissing something as unimportant simply because it didn't fit your preconceptions. Another blast shook the bunker, but this time no one looked worried. They all knew what was coming, and soon the pirates, and the arrogant Commander Han-Bin, would learn exactly why you should never ignore a distress call from a human colony. The quiet routine of Station K-117's observation deck shattered when every sensor array suddenly blazed to life. Warning signals flooded the holographic displays, their urgent red glow reflecting off the crystalline walls. The station's AI began broadcasting alerts in multiple languages, its usual calm voice tinged with what sounded almost like panic. Commander Han-Bin had been reviewing routine reports when the chaos erupted. He dropped his datapad, ignoring it as it clattered to the floor, and rushed to the main observation window. Behind him, his crew scrambled to make sense of the overwhelming sensor data. "Sir, energy readings are off the scale," called out one of the sensor operators, their head frills flattening in distress. "The signatures don't match anything in our database." Han-Bin reached the observation window just as space itself seemed to tear apart. The void split open like fabric being ripped, edges of reality peeling back to reveal swirling colors that hurt his eyes to look at. His first thought was that they were witnessing some kind of natural spatial anomaly. He was wrong. Through the impossible tear in space came ships, not the small vessels he was used to seeing, but monsters of metal and energy that dwarfed anything in his experience. The first vessel that emerged was so large it made the pirate ships attacking the colony look like insects in comparison. "By the first stars," Han-Bin whispered, his professional composure cracking as more ships continued to pour through the spatial rift. Each one bore distinctive markings on their hulls, markings that the station's computers quickly identified as belonging to the Earth Defense Fleet. The lead ship, a behemoth that the computers designated as the Thunderstorm, moved with impossible grace for its size. Its hull gleamed with a dark, metallic sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Energy readings from its power core alone were higher than the total output of Han-Bin's entire station. "Commander," his second-in-command's voice shook slightly, "we're receiving an identification broadcast from the fleet. It's Admiral Ianhai's personal flagship." Han-Bin felt his knees weaken as the implications hit him. The primitive distress calls they'd been ignoring hadn't come from some pre-FTL civilization playing with radio waves. They'd come from a human colony, humans who apparently had technology far beyond what the Galactic Council had believed possible. The Thunderstorm's massive form moved purposefully toward the pirate vessels, which now looked pathetically small in comparison. Behind it, the rest of the fleet spread out in a formation that spoke of centuries of military tradition and experience. "Sir, the pirate vessels are attempting to flee," reported the tactical officer. "They're charging their jump drives." But the human fleet moved faster than seemed possible for vessels of their size. Before the pirates could escape, smaller ships launched from the Thunderstorm's bays, intercepting them with precise coordination. The station's comm system suddenly activated, broadcasting on all frequencies. Admiral Yunhai's voice filled the observation deck, carrying authority that made even Han Bin's species' natural arrogance waver. "This is Admiral Yunhai of the Earth Defense Fleet. All hostile vessels are hereby ordered to power down immediately. Any attempt to flee will be met with decisive force. This sector is now under Earth Defense Fleet protection." Han Bin watched in stunned silence as the human ships demonstrated exactly what decisive force meant. Their weapons were unlike anything he'd ever seen, bypassing the pirates' shields as if they didn't exist. "Commander," one of his staff spoke up hesitantly, "there's something else. The fleet's energy signatures. They match theoretical patterns we've only seen in ancient records. The patterns some scientists believe were left by the precursor civilizations." The implications of that statement hung heavy in the air. If these humans had mastered technology that matched the legendary precursors, then every assumption the Galactic Council had made about them was wrong. As Han Bin watched the Earth Defense Fleet efficiently neutralize the pirate threat, he realized that his simple decision to ignore those distress calls hadn't just been a bureaucratic oversight. It had been a diplomatic catastrophe that would have far-reaching consequences for the entire galaxy. The thunderstorm turned slightly, its massive form now oriented toward Station K-117. Its shadow fell across the observation deck, and Han Bin couldn't shake the feeling that his comfortable universe had just been turned upside down. The humans weren't primitive at all. They were something else entirely, and he had a feeling the galaxy would never be the same after today. On the bridge of the thunderstorm, Admiral Yunhai stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the tactical display with eyes that had seen countless battles. The massive view screen showed the pirate vessels scrambling to form some kind of defensive formation, a futile gesture that almost made her feel sorry for them. Almost. "Primary targets identified and locked," reported her weapons officer, fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Their shield technology is at least 3 generations behind ours." Yunhai nodded, her expression remaining calm and composed. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the smooth efficiency that came from years of training and real combat experience. The thunderstorm's bridge hummed with power, its advanced systems making even the most sophisticated pirate vessels look like children's toys. "Target their engines," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service. "I want prisoners for questioning. Let's show them how the Earth Defense Fleet handles threats to our colonies." The response was immediate. The thunderstorm's weapon systems came alive, releasing precise bursts of energy that sliced through space. The pirates' shields flickered and failed under impacts they were never designed to withstand. Captain Mok's vessel, the Stellar Blade, attempted an evasive maneuver that might have worked against lesser opponents. But the human gunners had trained in gravity wells 3 times stronger than standard, their reactions honed by evolution on a death world. They adjusted their aim without even thinking, their bodies naturally compensating for variables that would have challenged most species' computers. 47 seconds, called out the tactical officer, almost sounding disappointed. "Target vessel's engines are disabled. Life support remains intact." Around the Stellar Blade, the rest of the pirate fleet faced similar fates. Some tried to fight back, their weapons splashing harmlessly against the thunderstorm's advanced shields. Others attempted to flee, only to find their escape routes cut off by smaller human vessels that moved with impossible agility. From the observation deck of Station K-117, Commander Han Bin watched in stunned silence as the humans demonstrated warfare on a level his people had only theorized about. The precision of their attacks, the coordination of their fleet movements, everything spoke of a species that had turned combat into an art form. Back on the Thunderstorm's bridge, Admiral Yunhai received reports from her fleet captains. The battle was progressing exactly as planned, with minimal damage to any of the captured vessels. "Ma'am," her communications officer spoke up, "we're receiving surrender signals from all remaining pirate ships. Captain Mok is requesting terms." Yunhai allowed herself a small smile. "Inform them that their surrender is accepted. Remind them that any further hostile action will result in an immediate and permanent response. As boarding teams prepared to secure the captured vessels, Yunhai turned her attention to the colony below. The pirates' bombardment had been stopped before any serious damage could occur, thanks to the colonists' hidden defensive systems and their remarkable resilience. "Send medical teams to the surface," she ordered, "and prepare my shuttle. I want to personally check on our people down there." A junior officer approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we've also detected a Galactic Council station in the sector. According to colonial reports, they ignored multiple distress calls." Ianhai's expression hardened slightly. The Council's dismissive attitude toward primitive species was well known, but this time their arrogance had nearly cost human lives. "Send them a full battle record," she commanded. "Let them see exactly what they dismissed as primitive chatter, and schedule a diplomatic meeting." It's time the Council understood that humanity is not to be underestimated. As her orders were carried out, Yunhai watched the final pirate vessel being secured. The entire engagement had lasted less than 15 minutes, a stark demonstration of the gap between human military capabilities and what the rest of the galaxy believed possible. In his captured ship, Captain Mach finally understood what his scans had been trying to tell him about the colony. He hadn't raided a primitive settlement. He had attacked a species that had evolved on a world that would kill most sentient beings, a species that had turned survival itself into a science. The battle was over, but its implications would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had revealed just a fraction of their true capabilities, and the message was clear. The Deathworlders were here to stay. In the hours following the battle, Station K-117 transformed from a quiet observation post into a center of frantic research and activity. Analyst Tu Hyun sat at his workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing centuries of accumulated data about Earth and its inhabitants. His hands trembled slightly as he compiled his findings into a report that would change galactic understanding forever. "This can't be right," he muttered, double-checking the environmental data. No species could evolve in these conditions, but the numbers didn't lie. Earth's gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature ranges, and natural disasters would be lethal to most spacefaring races. The station's archives held fragments of information about humanity, but they had been misclassified and buried under layers of bureaucratic oversight. Du Hyun dug deeper, piecing together a picture that grew more terrifying with each discovery. "Sir," he called out as Commander Hanbin entered the analysis center, "you need to see this immediately." His voice carried an urgency that made even the usually stoic commander hurry over. The holographic display showed Earth's specifications alongside standard habitable planet parameters. Earth exceeded every survival threshold by margins that should have made complex life impossible. Yet humans hadn't just survived, they had thrived. "These readings must be wrong," Hanbin said, his head frills twitching with disbelief. "Check them again." "Already did, sir, multiple times." Du Hyun brought up more data. "Humans regularly survive conditions that would kill any of our species instantly. Their bones are reinforced with calcium deposits. Their muscles can tear and repair themselves stronger. They can continue functioning with multiple injuries that would incapacitate most species." Commander Hanbin sank into a nearby chair as the implications hit him. His station hadn't ignored distress calls from some primitive civilization. They had dismissed warnings from one of the most dangerous species in known space. "There's more," Du Hyun continued, bringing up classified military assessments. "Their reaction speeds in combat exceed our biological limits. They can process multiple threats simultaneously and adapt to new situations faster than our tactical computers. And this is all just their natural capabilities, before we consider their technology." The displays showed footage from the recent battle. The human ships had moved with precision that shouldn't have been possible for vessels that size. Their weapons had cut through pirate defenses like they weren't even there. "Sir," Du Hyun's voice dropped lower, "I found references to something called the Restricted Contact Protocol. It was buried in our oldest archives. Apparently, Several centuries ago, the Council classified Earth as a restricted world, not because humans were primitive, but because they were considered too dangerous to contact until they developed interstellar travel on their own. Han Bin read through the protocol with growing horror. His station hadn't just ignored distress calls. They had violated one of the oldest and most important Council directives. The protocol existed to protect other species from premature contact with Deathworlders until they were ready to handle the implications. The gravity alone. Du Hyun highlighted Earth's specifications. Their homeworld's gravity is 1.8 times galactic standard. They evolved running, jumping, and fighting in conditions that would crush most species. No wonder the pirates' weapons barely slowed down the colonists. New data continued to pour in as the station's systems reanalyzed everything they knew about humans. Their adaptability, their resilience, their technological advancement, all of it had been hidden behind assumptions and bureaucratic misclassifications. Commander, one of the junior analysts called out, "We're receiving a request for a formal meeting from Admiral Yunhai. She wants to discuss our oversight regarding the distress calls." Han Bin felt a chill run down his spine. His station's mistake hadn't just been an administrative error. It had been a fundamental misunderstanding of one of the most formidable species in the galaxy. The humans they had dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated military capabilities that matched ancient legends of the precursor civilizations. As he prepared to face the consequences of his actions, Han Bin couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these Deathworlders had in store. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Around him, Station K-117 continued its frantic analysis, trying to understand a species that had turned their harsh evolution into an advantage. The age of underestimating humanity was over. A massive construction project unfolded in space near Colony Nexus 7, dwarfing everything around it. The humans called it Outpost Bastion, and its creation was a marvel to watch. Construction ships moved with precision, assembling massive sections of the station, while human workers in protective suits performed intricate tasks in open space as if the vacuum was their natural environment. Commander Han Bin observed the construction from Station K-117's main viewport, still adjusting to the new reality of having such powerful neighbors. The human base grew larger each day, its design incorporating technologies that the Galactic Council had only theorized about. Admiral Yunhai had made her point clear during their first formal meeting. This sector is now under Earth's protection, she had stated, her calm voice carrying an unmistakable note of authority. We trust there will be no more oversights regarding distress calls from human colonies. The Admiral's diplomatic skills proved as impressive as her military prowess. Within days of establishing Outpost Bastion, she had opened communications with the Galactic Council, presenting irrefutable evidence of humanity's technological achievements. The Council's response was unprecedented. An emergency session called to reassess humanity's status in galactic society. Han Bin spent days preparing his final report to the Council. Each word had to be carefully chosen, as this document would reshape galactic policy. His fingers hovered over the console as he wrote the crucial section. Species Classification Update. Humans, previously designated as primitive, now confirmed as advanced Deathworld species. Their technological capabilities exceed our previous assessments by several orders of magnitude. Their biological adaptations to high-gravity environments grant them significant advantages in combat and construction operations. Recommendation: immediate diplomatic relations and technology exchange protocols. As he worked on the report, human ships patrolled the sector with unwavering vigilance. Their vessels moved with a grace that seemed impossible for their size, demonstrating capabilities that made his station's defensive systems look primitive in comparison. The pirates who had survived the battle were being processed through a joint Human Council judicial system. Their testimonies added to the growing understanding of human capabilities. Captain Mock's description of the colony's defense had become required reading for Council military analysts. They moved like they were born in that gravity, Mock had reported. Our weapons barely slowed them down. They weren't just surviving in those conditions, they were thriving. Han Bin included these observations in his report, along with detailed analysis of human physical capabilities. The Council needed to understand that humanity's Deathworld origin wasn't just a curiosity. It was the foundation of their strength. Outpost Bastion's construction continued at an impressive pace. The station's design incorporated defensive systems that made Han Bin's technical staff question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Energy signatures from the human base suggested power generation methods that shouldn't have been possible. The human workers moved through space with remarkable ease, their specialized suits allowing them to work in conditions that would terrify most species. They seemed to treat the deadly vacuum of space as just another environment to be conquered and utilized. Admiral Yunhai's diplomatic initiatives were already bearing fruit. Several Council species had requested technology exchange programs, particularly in the fields of gravity manipulation and energy generation. The humans agreed, but their terms made it clear they would be equal partners, not subjects of study.